Mother Knows Death, starring Nicole Angemi and Maria Q. Kane.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Mother Knows Death. On today's episode, we're going to talk about the news story that broke last night about Charlie Kirk's murder investigation. Then we're going to talk about Tiger Woods' latest DUI. For the rest of the episode, we're going to talk about a lot of stories this week involving children either getting killed or hurt. And it's not going to be a very fun episode, but it's very necessary to talk about some of these things. So if you have kids, want kids, were a kid at some point, I think that you'll find the stories interesting. So all that and more on today's episode. Plus, we'll get into your emails, comments, and questions. All right, let's get started just real quick. I feel like we've talked about this maybe at least when it happened, but even though we haven't talked about the whole Charlie Kirk thing, there's been plenty of chatter about it online. So let's talk about this latest thing that came out last night.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely covered this when it first broke, and we covered it in the grocery room as well. But Tyler Robinson, who's been accused of killing Charlie Kirk, his defense lawyers are now saying that the bullet that they found at autopsy doesn't match the rifle that they believed he used to kill him. So this is obviously a huge problem if true.
So the thing is that it could very well be true. I think I've said this since day one about the emails between him and his lover just seemed weird and totally, it's just not the way that you would normally text message someone, especially young people that don't even speak anywhere near English.
Yeah, and we get more into that in our crossover with Gandhi on Sauce on the Side. So if people want to go back and find that episode from October, we talk a lot about more of the conspiracies going on behind this case. But
yeah. And I'm definitely always into conspiracies because so many times they end up being true, actually. But for this one, I don't really know. I'm not that invested in it. But as far as this new thing that came out, I feel like it's this is just my personal opinion. The defense is saying it in such a way that it's not really telling the truth, and it's very clickbaity. And it's doing exactly what they wanted to do, which is spread around the internet and have people talking about it. Because even the way that you just said it, it's kind of true, but it's like a stretch. So let me explain. So when you shoot a firearm, sometimes, not all the time, you could match up where the bullet came from. So it puts certain markings on the bullet, and there are certain experts that could look at this under a microscope, and they are able to see that the particular markings on the bullet were fired from a particular gun. And there's a lot of controversy over that science in general as well. But let's just say in sometimes that's possible. But in other times, especially when you're using these soft point projectiles like was used from this particular weapon, they're made to go into the body and expand on contact. So they're supposed to expand and fragment on contact. So it's not usual in any case or often with these particular types of ammunition that you could even tell what gun it came from, because it's basically destroyed and in pieces by the time the pieces are removed at autopsy. So yes, I guess you could technically say that the bullet retrieved from him at autopsy didn't match the gun, but it doesn't mean that it's not from that gun.
Well, can I point out one very important detail is he is the same attorney that Corey Richins just used that totally blew that case. So I'm not really surprised that they're trying to do that. They were trying to pin her husband as some drug addict when all he really had done was weed gummies, and then all of a sudden dies by fentanyl overdose, right? So with that said, I mean, are they really providing him the best defense? I don't know. And I don't think this woman is a public defender.
It's not that, though, because regardless of what you think about it, it's kind of messed up that they would put something out like that, because I think that most people don't really understand how this works, and it's tainting potential jury pool to have, lots of people saying, oh, then it couldn't have been him and this and that. And listen, like, I told you, I'm willing to listen about it because I just don't trust anything at this point. But just talking about this alone, I think that it's a little bit of a misleading headline. After I explain that to you, do you understand what I'm trying to say?
No, I understand what you're trying to say, and I understand just like in the Corey Richins trial, they're trying to throw anything out there that'll stick and put doubt in people's mind. I also found it weird that they said he's due back in court in a couple weeks because the defense is trying to get cameras prohibited from the courtroom. And I feel like that's a mistake because if you want to look at the Karen Reed case, for example, we had the cameras in there every day. Maybe they don't want them because of the Corey Richins trial, for example, right? So when there's not cameras in the courtroom, you have to really rely on reporters' testimony. And if we learned anything from the Diddy trial and our good friend Lauren Conlon, who was in the courtroom every day, she was saying that the reporting coming out was not necessarily matching what was going down in the room. It was all salacious and exaggerated to some extent. So, like, I feel like it's weird that they wouldn't want cameras in the courtroom because sometimes it points out flaws with the state's argument and helps the person that's on trial.
Yeah, and I mean, in this case, there's just from the general population on social media, when there's certain people that die, a lot of people are on the team of like that person. Brian Koberger's a good example. Like, there's definitely people that are called pro-burgers, which is the dumbest name, by the way.
Oh, there's one that lingers in our YouTube comments.
Well, hi.
Don't worry.
Hi. Anyway, so pro-burgers are people who think that Brian Koberger didn't do it. But, like, the vast majority, I would say, this is just my own estimate, like 99.9% of people think that guy is guilty, right? This particular case with Charlie Kirk, there's almost like a split. There's so many people that are just like, what went down is not what it seems. And there's all these different like camera angles. And we did do a dissection on this in the gross room. Right. I swear it was probably like the day after it happened. So there's probably much more updated information as far as that goes. But we do talk about the potential, like, how was he shot? Was he this? And then there's all these other things coming up that he had one of these like explosive devices under his shirt and all. Like, I don't know any of that because I didn't see the autopsy report. I just saw the video like everybody else did. But people really think that there's just like way more than what we're seeing. And really, like, that happened with JFK too. And it turns out that that's probably true with JFK. That there was way more going on, and it's not just like, oh, this guy just shot him and that's it. There was like way more to the story than that. So you never know. But another thing to bring up more conspiracies that's going on is apparently this sheriff that was partially in charge of getting this guy to turn in, this Tyler Robinson guy. So Tyler Robinson's the suspected shooter, and he has a dad, and his dad was like called some retired deputy that he knew and said, my son is the shooter and we want to turn him in. And then that deputy had called this sheriff, and that's how that all went down, that they got him in custody. Well, it just so happens that yesterday that dude like resigned or retired or something. So is it coincidental? I guess in theory it could be, but come on, like, it's like you see the headline of this thing come out that as soon as I read it, I was like, oh, I see what they're trying to do here. Okay. And then all of a sudden it's like this guy, and maybe he just was like, you know what? F this. I'm over this. I know this news story's coming out, and like, I'm not dealing with another thing with this case. Like, I've had a long run. I'm retiring. Goodbye, you know?
Is it also normal that the ATF and FBI are now roped into this case? Because if we all recall, this person is a civilian. He was not even a formal politician.
Well, I'm not exact. I guess if it was being investigated as like a terroristic threat, then that could be why they pulled them in. And, you know, we've talked to Giacalone about this, and we had our interview that was yesterday with Scott Duffey too. Like, if the police want to call them in to help, they can at any time. And I mean, he is a civilian technically, but he's also was like a major social media person. Like, he was a little bit more than just like the average Joe. So that's possibly why. And I don't even know, like, because you're saying, is this normal? Like, nothing is normal anymore. It hasn't been since March 16th, 2020. Like, just
Well, I was listening to The Nerve this morning where Maureen was covering the search and recovery for JFK Jr. and Carolyn and Lauren Bissett, and a segment she had on there brought up, like, why did these people who were technically civilians, like, yes, he's the son of a former American president, but they are technically civilians, and they had Navy divers looking for them. Like, it wouldn't happen for other regular people.
that might be protocol, though. I haven't written up their deaths yet for the book, but I will be, so I really will do a deep dive into it. But that could just be normal protocol for the waters that the bodies were in. They wouldn't just leave people there. They're going to have divers go in there. Like, remember when that accident happened in Baltimore recently, within the past couple of years, of that really large barge driving into the bridge, and
Yeah.
and all those, and there were people on the bridge at the time. So divers went in and looked for their bodies too. Like, you're not just going to let a body.
But Navy divers?
I don't know what the protocol is, because like like, let's say, for example, something like that happened on the Walt Whitman Bridge, right? That might be people that are associated with, like, the fire department. And I don't even know if ours has anybody that, I mean, Gabe is trained to go in the water for things, but I don't think that, like, with scuba equipment and stuff like that, that you have to get somebody that's a specialist to do that. And that's not going to be, like, I'm just asking you, like, who would you call?
I don't know.
In the
I
middle
mean,
of the ocean, or where were they off of the Nantucket Sound, or wherever they were off
we
of?
have many listeners, so hopefully somebody will
I'm
know
just,
and
I'm
send
just
us
saying,
an
like,
email.
I personally, that doesn't even run a red flag with me at all, because who else are you going to send? Just it has
know.
to be like a search and rescue person that could go that deep in the water.
But
Like,
I
it's
don't
not,
even think she brought it up. I think that the clip they were playing of somebody who worked the recovery mission had brought that point up, that they thought it was odd.
It could very well be.
I don't know.
But, like, if I think about the Coast Guard, for example, like, we talked about, I wrote up about Natalie Wood and the Coast Guard, and they're like, it's that the water, it just depends where the water is and whose jurisdiction it is. I particularly don't think it's weird, but I don't know. Anyway, you're going on a tangent about something that's like a whole other episode. So yeah, whatever. We'll see what happens with that. I'm not really, I would expect that that's what happened. The guy didn't have an exit wound, so clearly, like, the thing it exploded inside of his neck.
Well,
So if it was if it was actually a gun, but like, you're not going to have much to look at that point, because it hit bone and it fractured. And if you ever saw one that was completely expanded, it's there's nothing to look at. It's just like, I don't know.
I mean, just in my personal opinion, if I was this guy on trial and I just saw the absolute train wreck that was the Corey Richards trial, I don't know if I'd be
I know.
continuing with the same law firm, but whatever, that's up to them.
Maybe that's what happened. The Corey Richard thing happened, and then they were like, okay, we're going to have to do something drastic here, because we're not winning your case either.
Well, she's going to have to turn around her reputation. I mean, it just really didn't look good for her. All right. On Friday, Tiger Woods was in his fourth major car accident and second believed to be due to driving under the influence. And I believe the second or third crash he's been in where a car has been totally flipped over.
Which is so weird.
Yeah. It's like, how many times does that happen to somebody in their lifetime?
I hate talking about stuff like this, because then it's like, oh, I'll get in an accident tomorrow, my car flips over, because you're just like, how does that even happen? We do say that to Gabe all the time. We're just like, you're just driving up 676, which is the road that'll bring you to the Ben Franklin Bridge, and you see a car flipped over, and there are ones that he would go to for, if there was an accident or something. And we're just like, how does that happen? Like, how does a car just, like, flip over the side of the median? And I mean, it just happens. It just depends how fast you're going at what angle. So the first one in 2009, I don't really think is related. I personally think that the one in 2017, so that was his first in 2017 he got pulled over for a DUI.
He got the DUI in 2017 or pulled over for it, but in 2009 reportedly he was under the influence of Ambien, but the accident I believe was at the end of his driveway. That was that whole scene where his wife was like beating the windshield with the golf club, and apparently she had confronted him about having an affair that night. And shortly after that, everything with his mistress, Rachel Yucatel, came out. It was like a complete disastrous year in his life.
Okay, so I mean, but like at least something like that you could understand, because like if you're in the like, let's say you take an Ambien, you're getting ready to go to sleep, and then like your wife's creeping on your phone and finds all this stuff and is like, get out of the house and freaking out, and then you're like, okay, and get in your car, and you probably shouldn't be driving, but at least that one is that one. And that one was so long ago, 2009. Then the first time we're seeing that he was really caught driving under the influence, because we know it was done before that, was 2017. And did they ever say what the influence was that he was driving under at that time?
Well, they said prescription drugs, and something I wanted to point out, because I don't think they fully disclosed as of when we're recording this exactly what he was under the influence of, whether it was alcohol or drugs. I don't know if you saw
This
that
time?
somewhere. Yeah, did you
Oh
see
yeah, I
anywhere?
know. We'll get into this time. Yeah.
Okay,
there's
but
a lot.
anyway, I wanted to bring it up because that time he was taking a series of prescription drugs. His 2021 crash, where he was also in a rollover car accident, he had a bunch of injuries and a bunch of surgeries. What I'm getting at is that in these years, it seems that he was having a lot of surgeries done. So is it possible he was overtaking the prescription drugs he was getting for the
Yes.
surgeries?
So the first documentation we have of him taking prescription pain medications is 2017 when he got the DUI. And then in 2021, he was in such a serious crash that like he almost died. So they're
Did he
saying
cause that one, or he was just
it was
in
by
that car?
himself. He was
Okay.
speeding and went around a corner, and that's how they wrote it. But that to me does not mean that he was not under the influence. It just means that he was almost dead and they rushed him to the hospital, and they didn't really work it up like that.
Okay.
Because really, if someone is driving fast in an area that has a lot of accidents and stuff, and the person is completely unconscious or out of it to the point where you wouldn't even know if they were under the influence, and it wasn't obvious, like they didn't stink like alcohol or anything, I'm not sure that you would just typically run a drug test on the person. That's something actually an ER person could let us know about. So he goes into the trauma unit with an open fracture, which means that the bone broke in multiple pieces and it popped through his skin. Like it was a bad fracture. He had to have rods and other hardware put into his leg, and multiple surgeries associated with that he had to actually take off from golfing for an entire year. So from then, so that happened in 2021. Didn't say it was under the influence, but we don't know if it was or not. So we can't rule that out. And then you have this recent one that just happened this past weekend where he was charged with DUI. He did a breathalyzer, which was negative, but the police said that he was intoxicated. It was obvious he was intoxicated. He or at least impaired, I would say. Sweating profusely, lethargic, slow speaking, had glassy eyes, had blood. They were bloodshot, and also they were extremely dilated. And when you see the picture of him, you've seen the picture of him, right?
Oh, yeah.
He looks like completely zoned out.
He looks terrible. I mean, he looks like bloated and sweaty, and you could see his eyes are weird. And
So also they found 2 pills in his pocket that were hydrocodone, which is like Vicodin or something, but they're opioid. So
okay.
So my thing is, when you take opioids, typically it causes your pupils to be actually smaller, like pinpoint. So the fact that his pupils were really high, you could see that. So like, I don't want to totally just accuse him of other stuff right now, because if you are having severe stress, like you're scared shitless or something, which is possible if you just flipped over your car or you're scared you're going to get in trouble, that could cause you to have really big, wide open pupils. But also other substances like, so opioids are a central nervous system depressant, which would give you the lethargy and the the slow speaking and all of the other symptoms that the police were describing, but also other kinds of drugs like ketamine, LSD, psilocybin, things like that can do it. Cocaine could do it, can cause your pupils to get really big like that. So I don't know what that's all about, or any other kind of different kinds of prescription medications as well. So it's possible that he was not just on the Vicodin, like he could have been on other stuff, but he denied getting a blood test to see what was, which is smart on his part, honestly, because a lot more could come out of that, right?
How can you deny it?
What are they going to straddle you and stick a needle in your arm?
Yeah, but like, I don't know. I feel like I read that with Justin Timberlake too, that he denied doing some breathalyzer tests, and like obviously it's a good idea for you if you want to delay it, but like, how are they going to prove it in court later then that you were under the influence at the time you were pulled over?
Well, I don't really know how that works, and I mean, the thing is that his breathalyzer was negative, so I don't know if it's negative that they can say, like, if you blow in the breathalyzer and it's positive, they may be able to say you have to take a blood test so we could get an accurate result because you're getting charged with this. But
yeah,
it's
but
just
the
gonna
breathalyzer doesn't account for pills, so that's why I'm like, how do they prove people are
well,
like high or
the
something?
same thing could be said about my neighbor. He was in a car accident right outside the Cherry Hill Mall, right? And he's like, the lady that hit me, I mean, he was just out running errands, and the lady that hit him, she's like, he said her car stunk like weed so bad. And clearly, like, that has to be accounted for in an accident, right? And he kept saying to the cops, like, are you going to test her to see if she's high? Because, like, obviously you could smell the weed, I could smell it. And they were just kind of like, we'll put it in the report. Like,
Oh my
it's
God,
not,
that is ridiculous.
it's just not that it's not held the same as alcohol is, because it can't be really measured on the scene like that. So I don't know. This is like a cop/ER person question, but the bottom line is that listen, like, this guy, like, everybody thinks that this guy's the greatest person in the world, and I think just because you're a great athlete, which he is, I will give him that. I just think he's kind of a terrible person. He drives under the influence multiple times. The whole thing with the wife and the family, and like,
I'm not saying this to defend him in the slightest. I'm just saying it's worth pointing out that, like, if anybody watched that documentary that came out about him a couple years ago, he had a horrific upbringing. His dad, I don't think his dad was ever labeled an addict, so to speak, but had issues with alcohol. I think, in my opinion, you could argue that he was a sex addict. He was literally bringing 4-year-old Tiger Woods to the golf course, leaving him alone and fucking a lady in their minivan, like, while he's like 4 years old golfing, while his poor mother's at home, like, not knowing what's going on. He had a terrible upbringing and everything. It totally doesn't justify his actions, but I think when you see those things from a very young age, they become normalized,
yeah.
which probably in turn led to his affairs, led to his, like, I don't even think he's been drunk per se in any of these incidents, but he's definitely been on something.
Well, and one of the unfortunate things about the whole pain pill industry is that when you have a fracture of that type, it is extremely painful, and having to have those multiple leg surgeries and stuff, that any person would start taking pain medications.
And he just had surgery for his back and ruptured Achilles in October, so not very long ago.
So just like, and unfortunately people become addicted to them a lot. Like, it becomes a problem, and it ruins the rest of their life. And that's why whenever anybody has to get surgery, I'm always like, do not take those things unless you absolutely have to, and take them for like the first day or two to get over the hump, and that's it, because it could really ruin your life. I've seen it happen to people. So, I mean, listen though, he had a DUI before the pandemic in 2017 that he was on pills for too. So he has, as far as I'm concerned, he has a problem. And the thing is that, let's talk about every other celebrity that I've been writing about in the book recently. Just like, no doctor is going to sit there, no family, everybody around him is making money off of him. which it's just gross, really, because like, speaking of like how he was brought up and stuff, it's like you see this individual that's been used, like he's being used his entire life to just like be this person. His dad, like he was robbed of a childhood, like all that stuff. I get it, but like nobody around him is doing the best thing and getting him the help that he needs, and he clearly is just like, I mean, like, we're talking about this right now and saying, oh, whatever, but like he really could have just killed somebody the other day.
Oh, absolutely. And then it's like
he's dating like some Trump person, right? I don't know if it's like his niece. I don't even know who's Vanessa Trump. Is it like,
I have no idea.
Okay, well, it's somebody that's related to
I
them,
thought
right?
that was his daughter.
I don't know. Maybe it is. I don't know. So like I heard yesterday that I guess the Secret Service or whoever is like their security has been notified not to let his one grandchild in the car with him. And I'm just like, you guys are all like, this is all out in the open. Like, yeah, you could date her, but like you can't put her kid in the car because like he's not allowed to drive with the kid in the car. But he's just allowed to drive without the kid in the car. So as long as your kid's safe, like all the other kids on the road with their parents, just like going to the hockey game or going wherever, and like they're at risk to get killed by Tiger Woods because he's Tiger Woods. Like,
no, seriously. And I saw that people in the golf world are calling for him to have a suspension because they point out that all the golfers that are on like the PGA or going to the Masters or something have to sign a morality clause when they're signing up for these big high profile tours. And they're like, well, why just because he's like the greatest golfer of all time does he just get a pass when he's acting like this? And it's not even like the first time or a slip up. Like, he's literally been in at least 2 confirmed DUI car accidents. You could probably consider the 2009 one a DUI incident too if he was under the influence of Ambien. And we don't know about the one in 2021 because we don't know if they ever tested him.
Well,
and he said he doesn't want to hire a private driver for privacy reasons. And like,
well, yeah, because someone outside the circle is going to be like, bro's a drug addict. Like,
yes. So,
that's exactly why.
I don't know. Like, I don't think he should get away with this,
obviously. It's funny
because
last night we were talking about this with, who were we talking about this with?
Yesterday?
No, just like we were talking about, with Justin Timberlake. I was just like, why wouldn't you just hire a private driver? Like, it doesn't make any sense. If you have all that money, just whatever. And Gabe was saying last night, I think if I had all that money, I would get like an M3 BMW or M5, whatever they're called. And he's like, and I would drive everywhere. And I'm like, yeah, and you would be speeding everywhere in that thing and get hurt. Like, that's the thing. Like, he's like, you could never get me to hire a driver. I'd want to kill them. And it's true. Like, when we get an Uber and stuff, it's just like he's in the back, like ready to strangle the person. Like,
see, you're somebody that likes being driven around. Like, you make your husband and you make me drive you around, right? So like, you like it. I think for a lot of celebrities, I get it because they are never alone. They have no privacy. And it's literally the only time of day they can be by themselves. And that's probably why a lot of them don't do it, because they're like, I have no normalcy anymore, and this is the one thing I can do.
And listen, like, that's fine, but high and drunk is not fine. Just
no, definitely not. This episode is brought to you by The Gross Room.
Guys, we did a really disturbing high-profile death dissection this week because one of our Gross Room members actually recommended it. We had a couple posts and a couple news stories this week about circumcisions gone wrong, and this brought up this particular case with one of our members, so we did a deep dive on it yesterday, and it was really, really disturbing about a baby named Baby Bruce. That's what the case is called.
Yeah, and this baby had a botched circumcision, and his parents were eventually linked to the psychologist, and it was in the 60s, and the psychologist eventually convinced them to raise Baby Bruce as a girl, so they started doing that, and we just kind of get into how that affected the family long term, other really messed up things the psychologist was doing behind the scenes, and you go into all the surgeries and everything this kid had over his life, and it's just really crazy to read about.
Yeah, it is because it talks a lot about, because there are other circumstances besides having an accidental penis amputation because of a botched circumcision. I mean, we have cases in the gross room of like a kid just falling or dropping the wrong thing when they're really little and having a penis amputation. But also there could be genital defects when a baby's born intersex or something. And just talk a little bit about how they used to treat that back in the day. Obviously, that didn't work out to just say, oh, we're just going to turn you into the opposite sex. And then the other way, of course, now how we do it. And so some more modern day surgeries, how they would approach that. So it's a really good article.
Head over to thegrossroom.com now to sign up.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about, and the reason that I lumped these together this week is because there were at least 5 stories of little kids getting hurt or killed this week. So I was just like, let's just lump them together and talk
All
about
due
these.
to freak accidents.
All due to freak accidents, yeah.
All right, so first in early March, a 4-year-old girl drowned in the pool of an Airbnb her family was renting in Miami, and now the family is planning to sue the homeowners for lack of safety.
So according to this person's lawyers, they're saying in Miami-Dade County in Florida, there's mandatory safety measures that are required for ordinance of pools at short-term rentals. So that would include an Airbnb. Now, I guess my first question is, because I've never done this, but if you sign up to have an Airbnb, what does that look like? Is there like legal documents that you have to sign? Is there a test that you have to do or something to prove the local ordinances what are required when you're offering something like a swimming pool?
Yeah, I don't know, because they're saying that there in particular, Miami-Dade requires at least one safety feature, such as a pool safety barrier, pool safety cover, a pool alarm, or a door latch or alarm. And this family is saying they didn't have any of that.
Okay, so this might even go further to not just to the person that rented the house, but to Airbnb to say, how are they? Because like, I guess the way I'm looking at it is I don't have Airbnbs, but I use Airbnb quite often. With children, and you go there. I mean, this is kind of where I go off of this story and kind of disagree with it a little bit. I go there thinking that it's relatively going to be safe. So, for example, I don't know, they're not going to breathe in carbon monoxide or something like that. Like, it's going to be safe to sleep there and stuff. But certainly if I had a 4-year-old and there was a pool in the backyard, like, that's 100% my problem.
Well, I was going to ask you that because you have a pool, for example, and isn't the only rule for where you live having a pool that you have to have a fence with a gate that locks? So technically, if somebody's staying inside of the house and goes out through your back door and the drowning occurs, like, you have the safety measure in place.
But that's not what's listed here. Like, they're saying, and I don't know if it's the same in New Jersey, but like, I don't have what's on this list here. So if I was renting my house,
I'm saying, like, if this were to happen here, that would be the case for you.
But we don't know, because that's for I own the house. It's not for renting it.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's what I'm saying.
There,
like, if you go by Florida's rental for short term, which like that's the thing. I don't even know if I was going to put my house on Airbnb. I wouldn't even know that I had to consult laws about short term rentals. Like, I wouldn't even know that. So I'm assuming that Airbnb offers that information to people when they list their house. But as of right now, my pool is safe for ownership in this town, in this state that I live in, but I don't have I don't know what the safety barrier means, but I don't think that the fence would be considered that. I don't have a pool safety cover. I don't have an alarm. I don't have a latch or anything like. I mean, I have a lock on my back door, but I mean, I just don't understand. And listen, like, I understand if you go on vacation, the last thing that you want to happen is something like that happening to one of your children. It has to be the worst feeling ever, especially a preventable death. But I don't see how that's not your problem when you go on vacation. You shouldn't just assume, like, that's your problem when you go to anyone's house. When you come here with baby Waylon, like, that's that's our problem.
Well, yeah,
whoever's in charge of watching him. It's not like
Obviously, but like if they're filing this lawsuit, that's the only thing they're going to be able to get them on, is that they were in violation of the ordinance or some type of law, because otherwise you can't just sue somebody because your kid got out in the middle of the night. I mean, it's not dismissing the tragedy that occurred, but like you can't just sue somebody because you were staying at their house and your kid got out in the middle of the night and that's what happened.
Because I stayed in an Airbnb about 2 years ago. I mean, I've stayed at multiple ones with pools. But I stayed at one a couple years ago that had a creek right behind the house that a little child could easily drown in as well. If they got out. And like when you go to Airbnbs, they don't have alarms on the doors usually. So if the door were to open in the middle of the night, you would know it, right? You wouldn't know it if you were sleeping as a parent. So I don't know. I mean, they are going to get them on this loophole of the law, but I still don't, I don't think it's their fault.
Well, yeah, but at the same time, if that's the ordinance to renting out, the homeowner needs to accommodate that as well, because like they are technically in violation of that. So yeah, on a technicality, they are responsible for it if they were not doing what they were supposed to be doing.
Yeah, and I just try to think about the setup at my house and stuff. I really am not familiar with a pool alarm. I know that we talked about it remember that one case of that influencer that her son died?
Yeah.
I'm just not familiar with what it is exactly. Like if someone falls into the pool, that it detects someone fell into the pool perhaps. I'm not exactly sure how it works, or if any of these things are super easy to put. Because if you're renting the house to say that it has a pool, like how do you put a safety cover over it if it's being rented for that very reason? Just like I just have questions about that.
But if that's the law, they have to abide by it. So it doesn't matter if it's difficult or not. Like if that is the law as far as renting it out, they have to be in compliance, or they're responsible for a situation.
The thing is that the thing that's listed as a safety barrier might very well be just a fence. And they might have one, you know?
Well, this family's saying they didn't have anything, so we'll have to keep tabs on it and see what happened. All right, next, this family brought their 4-year-old daughter to the hospital with flu-like symptoms, a burning sensation in her throat, and difficulty breathing, and it turns out that she swallowed a button battery. They had no idea, and it seems like this family didn't even think they had anything in their house that had a button battery in it. So, like, where did it come from?
I guess that's what's disturbing about this case to the physicians taking care of this child, because usually you bring in a child and say, oh my God, my kid swallowed this thing, and check. And that's not why the parents brought the kid in. They brought the kid in because the kid was sick. And they did an x-ray, and probably I would say the reason that they even did the x-ray was because they probably were trying to see if the child had pneumonia. And when they did the x-ray, they were like, oh shit, this is really bad. So the kid ingested this battery unknowingly, and it essentially ate through her esophagus and went into her airway. Because that's what it does. It literally eats through the tissue. It puts off chemicals, mixes with the chemicals inside of the body, and it just erodes right through. It puts a hole through. So she ended up getting like probably a bacterial or a viral infection through that communication, just because, God, like anything inside of her body that she put into her mouth was now open to that because of this hole that was created. So this is unusual, actually, because usually a kid will swallow it and it goes down into their stomach, and then you could see that happening in the stomach or the GI tract, that the battery then mixed with the stomach acid is eating through the bowel and causing a perforation, and that's how the child presents. So not that this has not never happened before, but you know, people don't even realize that you know when you have like a greeting card that makes the noise, that makes a song, that's a button batteries in there. They're very easy to get a hold of for kids.
They're in so many toys too, which should not be allowed because of how dangerous and the risk of a kid swallowing them.
They're in, like, you know, all those lights you buy for like out back and stuff. Like they're in those little remote controls. They're just in everything. Like, and it's hard because, like, this will be the thing. Like when you're having your baby, right? So you're gonna have your house like your house is going to be set up a certain way because you have a baby living in there all the time. But the thing is that when you have a kid, you visit other houses, they go to friends' house, this and that, and then you don't know if their house is proofed as much. And that could be something as simple as the parents didn't even know they had it. It could happen if the kid went to the grandma's house, like, and put like one of those little remotes in their mouth and it popped out. Like,
I even just saw on Instagram this morning this reel that this lady was like, I kept finding these little like beads in my baby's crib and I couldn't figure out for weeks where they were coming from. And then she found out that they were like subtly leaking out of a teddy bear in the kid's crib.
well, yeah, I mean, I don't know, because have you read the recommendations? Because my personal thing is with a crib, and this is back years ago when I had the girls, over 10 years ago now. It's like crib, fitted tight ass sheet, and like that's it.
I don't think the baby was actively sleeping in the crib. It might have been like a decoration in place. Like, I think the kid was in a bassinet, but then every time she kept going in there, like these little beads were in there.
Yeah, I mean, I just would never have like a toy, just because there's so many things that you're like, oh, that's a new. Because before it was like people would put teddy bears, like the old school ones from the 80s, and their eyes were like buttons, right?
Yeah.
And then the kid would get the button off and choke on it. So it's like, okay, the doll could just be like very light and stuffy, but then it's just all these other things that you never think of that could happen, which is why it's just better not to do anything.
And just because the recommendation is just crib and sheet, this reminded me of just meat and cheese and bun.
Because that's what it is. It's like when you look at the safest place for a kid to sleep like that, it looks like very uncomfortable.
Well, yeah, but what I'm getting at, though, is just because that's the recommendation doesn't mean that's what's happening. If you look at any, like, mommy bloggers or whatever on Instagram, or you even go on Pinterest to look up nursery inspiration, they got mad shit in there. They got blankets, they got pillows, they got stuffies in there with the baby in there. So, like, even if you're putting the kid down for 30 seconds to grab something out of the closet, it's just unnecessary. And believe me, I have the desire to decorate the shit out of that thing. I have the desire, but my baby's safety is more important.
But the thing is, too, is that, I mean, to an extent, because like we were talking about, I don't know if we were talking about it on our last episode or when we were talking about it in the Gross Rooms episode, that the Fisher-Price Rock and Play sleeper was like my favorite thing of all time. And the only reason I got that was because Andrea told me to get that. And the only reason she got it is because like everybody was like, this thing's the shit when you have a kid, right? And then all of a sudden it was like you heard a couple kids died from it and it's banned and you can't get it anymore. And I was just making a joke like, oh, you could go to a place like Once Upon a Child and like get one probably still because they're like the best things ever.
Yeah, but then Emma said they're really picky there. They don't take stuff like that.
So anyway, yeah, so I've been thinking about when you were a baby. Now, this was in 1994, but your crib was my crib for when I was a baby that passed through all of us. So that was from 1979 to 1994. You had the same crib.
It better, because Mom told me that in 1979, your crib was like $800. Which I was like, I could not believe.
The safety things had to have changed from 1979 to 1994. I just didn't even think about it because, like, I feel like Mom gave it to my cousin Gina, and then Gina used it and then gave it to me. It was like this. We passed it all throughout each other. And I got you these bumpers. I don't even know if you know what they are, but
I know what they are, yeah.
Okay, so they're like stuffed like blanket things that go around so the kid doesn't bang their head on the side of the crib. And yours were like really puffy and like had ruffles. And then it had a comforter that matched for baby size. Because that was like a thing, a comforter for a baby. But like,
wow,
you all survived. So it's like it might just be a little overkill. I always say this. If you're born and you're hardy, you're going to live through anything. Like, it wasn't meant to be if you're going to like die from suffocating in a bumper like that.
Let me go on this tangent for a minute. So like Mom buys this like actual piece of furniture crib that lasts 15 to 20 years. I'm sure Dee Dee used it too, right?
Oh,
so
sure.
Like for 20 years we're using this crib in our family. This weekend we put together my baby's crib. not only were 3 pieces of it damaged upon opening the box, this is a $600 crib, by the way. Damaged pieces. I have to put the whole thing together. I'm sure Mama bought it already put together. It scratched the entire time we put it together. And just like the quality overall, I'm just like, I just cannot believe.
It's probably not even wood.
I don't think it
It's
is,
like
but I
IKEA
just
stuff.
can't even believe how much money this cost. Because I was like, I'm going to get a nicer one. So it like, hopefully if I go on to have another kid or it lasts forever, it's supposed to turn into like a toddler bed and stuff. And I'm like, this thing couldn't even have handled 10 minutes of construction. It's scratched all over the place. It's insane.
Well, if you're saying in 1979, Mom paid like $800, which is understandable because that's something ridiculous that at least people in our family used to just do ridiculous things like that. And things used to cost more, like when the VCR came out, they were like $800, and then by the time they were almost obsolete, it was like you could get one for $30, right? Like that's just how stuff works. But you could still get a decent crib piece of furniture from a furniture store that will cost you thousands of dollars, which would be comparable to the 1979 price.
I just can't believe it, because also like this thing has a pamphlet of instructions that none of the pieces match the pictures, and it's like put letter M on letter N, and I'm like, well, nothing has stickers on it labeling it, and everything looks the same. So like it took 3 hours for us to put this thing together that should have taken 20 minutes. I just couldn't believe it.
All right, let's continue to talk about kids swallowing stuff because we have another 2 stories. So this next one is,
all right, so this mother who was a manicurist was changing her 1-year-old's diaper, and suddenly he started choking on a piece of acrylic nail that he had to pick up, or it was close by, and then she immediately tried to get it out of his mouth, but he ended up swallowing it and dying.
oh my God.
What a nightmare.
Well, he didn't really swallow it. It went in his airway, but I don't, yeah, like, and that's the thing, like, especially if you do nails for a living, then a lot of times you have them at your house because you're either doing people at your house or you're just like painting sample ones and or doing your own, and there's going to be pieces on the floor. Like, this is just it's a kid choking on a Lego. It's like the same thing. And this is one thing I want to talk about with this story and the next story. When you have a baby, their esophagus and their airway, they're just the opening of their oropharynx, or where, when the food leaves your mouth or when anything that's in your mouth leaves and goes, you have a flap called the epiglottis that covers the airway. It's supposed to cover the airway when food is going down so you don't die, right? But how many times have you had something like that happen that it gets tricked for whatever reason and you start coughing excessively because something, that's when you say something.
Sometimes air just hits it the wrong way.
You're just like, something went down the wrong pipe. Well, that wrong pipe is your airway, right? So the airway in a 1-year-old is just so small. And then as you get older, obviously it gets bigger, and even adults choke too. I had a case that I posted on Instagram and in the gross room recently of a person that choked on a giant wad of gum, right? So it's only so big, and it's not really that big. Well, in this particular case, a fake nail seems like it's very small, but it's enough to do the job in a baby that's small, because their airway is like, think about the diameter of your pinky finger,
Yeah.
So if you think about a fingernail going down and just going at the right angle and covering it, it could be enough. And unfortunately, it could have went down far enough that the mom wasn't able to immediately see it and reach it out. And she could have even honestly pushed it further in when she was trying to do that.
This is just like so horrible to think just in a split second they could pick up something like that and something bad like this could happen.
Listen, it is. And you shouldn't let it ruin your life. But especially when, at my house, for example, you can't just let a kid run around my house because it's not set up for a baby like that. You have to be a little bit more like, people are around and looking, or have designated areas. Like my neighbor across the street has one of this like really cool like playpen thing, but it's a huge one that she set up. So it's like a huge corner of the room. It's not just like a little playpen. And if they're and in their little safe space, you make sure that it's like that. Because, like, Waylon can't go up in the girl's bedroom ever.
Waylon
Ever.
can't go anywhere in your entire house. Like, what are you talking
No,
about?
my
He's gonna
house
have to be confined to baby jail the whole time.
Well, I mean, that is true. But I did raise babies in this house.
Yes, but you did not start decorating the way you did until they were old enough to like.
Yeah, I didn't.
And they still break stuff when they.
No,
walk
I don't
around
care about
sometimes.
breaking stuff, but yeah, like there's stuff I wouldn't ever have stuff on the shelf that's this little because that's what kids do. They just pick it up and they put stuff in their mouth. So, but like the girls' room, for example, there is shit in their room that like I don't even know the amount of times you could possibly clean it that there would be some stuff up there. Just like little toys, little this, little Legos, everything. So
Well, yeah, and like I have that really cute bar cart like next to my TV in the living room.
yeah.
Ricky was like, "This is gonna have to go downstairs because he's gonna break it," and I was
Yeah.
like, "I got 6 months, relax." Like,
Yeah.
he's not even
No,
gonna be moving.
You don't, yeah, you have more than, yeah, exactly. So, okay, so we're talking about a little fake nail in a baby, but now the next story, we're talking about a much older kid and a grape.
Yeah, an 8-year-old choked to death on a grape at snack time at school. I was looking into this because I was going to ask you as a mother, like, I know you have to cut grapes up for kids for a while, but like what I saw in my research is that by age 5 or 6, they're typically considered okay.
I don't know. It's still like I had heard of a case when I was at the medical examiner's office about a guy who was like sitting on the front porch. In the city you have row houses so people could sit out on the stoop, right? And the guy was sitting out there next to his neighbor with her son that was 5. And the mom was like, I'm going to run in the house real quick and go to the bathroom. And like the guy was older and he gave the kid a grape and the kid like choked on the grape. The kid died from the grape.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy just felt awful, but obviously he felt awful about it. And like an older man hasn't dealt with a little kid for a while and just didn't even think of it. And so grapes freak me out, but all stuff does that's like that. The cherry tomatoes, the hot dogs. Because even they say like a hot dog, the diameter of the hot dog is bigger than the diameter of their airway. So, and it's the same with a grape. So even if you cut a grape, you're really supposed to cut it in half and then cut it in half again because you're just making a perfect circle size that would fit, that would lodge right into their airway like that. And even as the kids got older and stuff, if I ever did give them grapes, like I'm trying not to be like a complete crazy person and embarrass them in front of their friends, but still I'm just like you're sitting at the lunch table and you're eating grapes and you're laughing and then you suck one in. Like an adult could choke on one too. Especially like the bigger plump ones.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. Are they factoring how large grapes are getting now with GMOs and stuff? I feel like this is such an exaggeration, but like sometimes you see one and you're like, this is almost as big as a lime. It's enormous.
No,
crazy.
They are getting bigger. Grapes these days are getting bigger. So, but yeah. So it is an 8-year-old. It's like I'm telling you, it could have happened at lunch. Because if you ever watch the kids eat, I hate it. It gives me anxiety. They put too much food in their mouth at the same time, and they're laughing and like hitting each other on the back and this that. Like it's just a freak accident. It's all it is. It's like a freak accident, but it just sucks. And especially in an 8-year-old, you would just think they were beyond that point of having to worry about that. But really, a grape is probably bigger or the same size as the diameter of an 8-year-old's airway.
Well, the biggest freak accident of this week was that a 2-year-old was crushed to death by a power seat in a Hyundai. So now all of these, I think it's the Palisade model is all being recalled.
Yeah, I want to put this out there because I saw a video of this and it's terrifying. So if the kid is in the back row seat, so technically a kid should be in a booster seat at that age anyway.
Well,
but
it was a special situation. I don't know if you saw what happened. The parents were running errands with the kids and the dad went in the store and the mom let the kids out of the car seats to just like play around in the car while they were waiting for the dad to come back. And that's when it happened.
Okay. Because they showed a video of it with an example from another child, And apparently, like, even when the car's on or when the car was driving, for some reason that could be deployed. So when the kid pushes the button, you know, when you have a third row, sometimes there's a button in the back. I feel like it even could be done on my car, honestly, in an SUV. You hit this button on the back and the seats go down so you can make the trunk bigger. You've seen that, right?
Yeah.
Well, apparently, like, a kid could push it themselves and like while the car is on or while the car is driving. And if you're driving and paying attention to the road and the kid pushes that and they're getting crushed, positional asphyxia, it's called, when their body's actually being crushed like that, they won't have any air to even breathe to get the words out that they're having a problem. And if the mom's driving and really paying attention to the road, in this case, it was more likely like the mom was playing on her phone while her kids were jumping around the car while the dad was inside of the store. Because if you were there and witnessed it happening right away and did it, the kid would be fine. But
You don't know that though, and it could have happened so quickly that by the time, like,
well,
the damage
I'm saying
was
that
done.
she could have been distracted, and that's
I know, but
likely
I'm
what
saying
happened.
even if you were paying attention, there is a possibility it happened so quickly and it was so extreme that there was no going back. Because I mean, if she's in the third row, you're in the driver's seat. It's going to take a minute to get back there, even if you see what's going on right away. But they had cited that other incidents had happened like this, where people accidentally hit the button either getting into the car or they were in the seat and it started happening. And even as an adult, if this starts happening, like, if you're like really stuck between the seat in front of you and the seat below you is lifting down, how are you supposed to wiggle out of it? Especially if you don't know where the button is to stop it.
Well, and this is my, you know, I have many complaints about my car. I always joke about this, but one complaint I have about my car is that there's a bunch of buttons in the back that my children can touch, which I'm just like, why does anyone sitting in the back have to have controls of any of the car? Like the sunroof, the air conditioning, what else can they do? The volume of the radio. I'm kind of like,
No, that's unacceptable.
they're all three of them are unnecessary, right? So this particular one, because you think, like, you have a third row, and yes, like, adults could use it to all go, but like 95% of the time, it's like parents are getting it so they have an extra row to either pick up kids or have space for their own kids, right? Why does the kid even able to hit that button? That should only be in the back anyway if you need it, right? Like, your hand shouldn't be able to just touch it and put it down. So, I don't know. It's just like it, and if it was in park position outside of a store like that, I don't know. Like, because like
It's unacceptable. It can't detect that something's blocking it from fully going down. I mean, I can't believe they're not testing something like that before they put thousands of these cars on the market.
I feel it. So is it like, oh, there's not that function, or it just malfunctions?
No, I think from what I'm reading, I believe the problem is that it can't, in other cars that do this, it can detect if something's blocking the way and it will go up. You know, like,
When you're in an elevator.
No, when your trunk is automatic and it's coming down and your head's right there, if it detects your head, it's not going to keep coming down. It'll go back up. It doesn't do that. It just keeps pushing down until it thinks it's
But is it
down.
like, it's the same thing with an elevator? When you stick your arm, it won't shut. But like,
Yes.
But like, one of our friends' moms had this happen, that the sensor didn't work and the thing just continued to crush. Like, that was it a malfunction, or it's
I
just
don't
like
think
they
it
never
was-
thought of it? And
I don't think they recalled tens of thousands of cars because one malfunctioned or 3 reported incidents malfunctioned. Like,
well, yeah, they would if there was a death and a pending huge lawsuit.
maybe, but
That's soft. That's what, because the reason that I think that is because they said that they're going to try to. This is what I got out of the article. They're going to try to do a software update to fix whatever it is, and then if not, then they're going to have to manually like replace stuff. So
Yeah.
it seems like it's like a malfunction rather than just like not having it at all.
well, we'll see how that turns out. All right, on to your questions and emails. If you have a question or story for us, please submit it to stories@motherknowsdeath.com. Please keep them brief. The ones we're going to read today are a little longer, but they are worth it. But please keep them brief because it's hard to read long ones. All right, first is from Melissa. I wanted to weigh in on the kids flying alone thing. When I was 10 and my sisters were 8, we flew alone from Toronto to Florida as my grandparents lived there in the winter and my dad couldn't come. It was not scary for me at all. We were seated with 3 other unaccompanied minors, and the flight attendants treated us like we were VIPs. This was back in the 90s, so who knows if that's still the case, but it was seamless for us.
Yeah, I think in general for life, when we were like, oh, this was awesome when we were kids, like, is it awesome anymore? I don't know. But that's a cool story, and good for your parents for getting rid of you guys for the summer to go to your grandparents' house. I might try that. Is mom listening? I might try that. Well, I'm getting rid of them to your house this summer to be babysitters.
Please, your mother is on a cruise right now, so like she's out of touch.
Cruise life.
Okay, this is from Gross Remember Amy. I really enjoyed your conversation on MKD about randos being able to visit patients in the hospital after birth, and I have a story for you. After my son, who is now 14, was born, I was super out of it for 5 days. I had to have an emergency C-section, and in the middle of surgery, I was screaming in pain because I got a spinal headache from the epidural. The worst headache of my life, and 5 near sleepless nights continued when I was in the hospital. My son was fine and totally awesome right from the start, but I was a mess. About 12 hours after surgery, some lady from Welcome Wagon was let into my room. Welcome Wagon seems like a good-natured organization that drops by to welcome people to a new neighborhood and gives, quote, gift baskets to new moms, but they actually are an advertising company that makes money by delivering advertising and samples. This lady woke me up and started chatting with me and forced a bag of diaper samples, formula pamphlets, and a miscellaneous junk into my shaking hands. Wait, pause. That is so messed up. Like, you're trying to recover from this.
Dude, I like yelled at one of them when I was having Lucia because they would come in and be like, oh, you should really wake her up to feed her. And I'm like, fuck you. She'll wake up when she's hungry. Like, let me sleep. Do you know, like, how much, especially, like, right after the baby's out of your body and you're like, wow, like, I actually, like, don't have that huge bulk. You feel it now, right? And how many weeks are you?
I'm 32 weeks this Saturday, so.
Okay, so wait until you're, like, 42 weeks. Seriously. Like, it's terrible, right? It's like, think about this. The very first night you have your body back and you're sleeping, and then they're just like, hey, you should wake the baby up and feed her. Like, what?
I already told Joe before we recorded last week, I was like, I don't think I can fit behind the desk much longer. Like, it's getting tight back here. All right, let's continue. She had my name and my son's name, which she only would have known if the hospital told her. I was so out of it, but the bitch in me managed to rise, and I told her how inappropriate this was. Agreed. She was totally stunned, like she never thought it could be an issue. I also politely chewed out the nurse who strolled in a few minutes later to ask if Welcome Wagon came to see me before collapsing back into near delirium. When the hospital sent me a survey later, I told them that this was totally unwelcome and also a violation of privacy. Yes, I agree with that 100%.
And, like, really? What are you getting out of it? Like, 3
diaper samples?
Diaper samples? Like, who
Would
cares?
they give you 2?
Yeah. And I know exactly what she's saying. It's like a diaper wrapped in cellophane, and then there's like a coupon with it. I know I feel like they actually did that with you too, or with my kids too when they were born. The little ones. Yeah, I don't know. Just that there is a certain level of like a lot going on during that time, and the last thing you need is like some random stranger coming in. I agree with you. Because you do have to have, like, the lactation nurse and this and that. But you're like, all right, they're, like, going to help me. It should be about you, not about them making money.
Well, now that I'm privy to this, I feel I have to inquire if this happens at the hospital.
Okay, we're just going to put on your chart that the Welcome Wagon is not welcome.
Okay, so because she filled out the survey and complained, they ended up banning Welcome Wagon from the hospital immediately. This is the best thing you could have done for all the mothers that came after you.
Yes, we all thank you.
All right, she said, on another topic, I'm off to Vancouver in a few weeks for final assessments to possibly be a living kidney donor. Nicole, have you done autopsies on kidney donors and recipients, and is there anything notable about their anatomy?
No, I have done multiple, not on donors, but on recipients. So one interesting thing that a lot of people don't know is when you get a kidney transplant, they don't take out your old kidney. So sometimes you have an autopsy on someone that has 3 kidneys or 4 kidneys, and the other ones are just little and kind of gimpy. you could see why they weren't working and they're kind of atrophied, but they leave them in there. So it is something cool to look at. And that's really cool that you're doing that, by the way.
All right, last is from Sarah. I resonated with your situation so much, Maria. We are close in age, I think. I'm a 95 baby. Yes, we are very close. And I've also spent a decade seeking help for endometriosis with little help. They've not even done an ultrasound, let alone a laparoscopy. They told me they do not do that at my GYN and referred me to a surgeon. I never saw him in person, and I was scheduled for a partial hysterectomy with the possibility I woke up with no ovaries. Here's where it gets a bit complicated. I am a Hodgkin's lymphoma survivor. The chemotherapy I had in 2018 caused side effects including lung injury and vascular damage in my extremities. I was short of breath due to lung injury, and doctor's team wanted to move forward, but my primary said no way, so I rescheduled. I never heard back from their office after contacting them several times since. I am a mother of 2 amazing, awesome kiddos who are 3 and 5. I already struggle physically with POTS-like syndromes due to my chemo injuries, and I live in agony during my period, exactly like you were describing. I also struggle with PMDD. My kids were both born via C-section. My daughter was breech, and my son was born 20 months after her, so I chose a repeat C-section. I believe my endo is now in my C-section scar, and I have no idea where to turn next. Any info you could share would be awesome.
Well, where does
God.
does it say where she lives?
I don't. She put in I redacted some stuff because you were calling out some specific doctors, and I didn't want to get sued. I forget where you live off the top of my head, but if you are in the tri-state area, or if you're willing to travel. But I went to Dr. Shama Matthews at Penn Medicine at Princeton, and she is an endometriosis specialist, and I had a wonderful experience with her. You even went to the first consultation.
Yeah,
with
she
me.
was awesome. I would suggest, if you don't live near us, which is probably likely, just trying to go to any university medical center near you. Like the closest cities usually have more specialized people like that. I know one of our friends went to one at Pennsylvania Hospital, which is also part of University of Penn. But any like major university hospital should have a specialist for that. Another option, which so I also had endometriosis diagnosed by laparoscopy, and I had, like, not to get into a long story, but I was supposed to get a hysterectomy because I was done having my kids and stuff, and it was like, it didn't work out. But I was able to get a procedure called an endometrial ablation, which is they stick a tool up inside your uterus and essentially just singe it like you would a branding tool or something. It's a hot tool that just burns your endometrial lining. And that helped me a little bit. It's not curative. It could really singe the top layer of the endometrium and myometrium, the top layer of the myometrium. So if you do have endometriosis, which is called adenomyosis, inside of your uterus wall, it could help a little bit. As far as the external stuff, that's on the serosa of the uterus or the tubes or the ovaries, it's not really going to help with that. But if you do have a symptom of really a lot of bleeding during your period, that will help with that a little bit. And I had some friends that had that, and that procedure is very semi-non-invasive. You go in for a same-day thing. They don't have to cut you open, at least. There are complications you could get with it, but it's like a same-day thing, and you're kind of good to go a couple days later, as opposed to a full surgery like that. But some of my friends that had it done, like, never bled again. I did a little bit, but not really anything crazy. And now that I'm, like, in that weird perimenopausal thing, like, I haven't, even though I'm not technically in menopause yet, like, I haven't even bled for a couple years now because of that procedure. So it did help with that, at least. If you're not able to get, like, anything else done, that you might want to consider something like that.
I guess my advice would be is that I switched from the OBGYN practice I was going to a midwife practice because they tend to listen to you more and actually care instead of just giving you the 5-minute appointment.
They probably have more time.
Yeah, they have some
Which-
more time, but you also don't get blown off. And I feel like that really started when, like, I was like, I'm having fertility issues. I've been trying to get pregnant a long time and it's not working. And then they suggested a reproductive endocrinologist. I don't know if you can go to a reproductive endocrinologist unless you're trying to get pregnant. I think there are certain practices that you can, but the one in particular I went to, I think is 100% pregnancy focused. So I don't know if you want to try to go there or that outlet. And then that doctor, my reproductive endocrinologist, took me very seriously from the start, recommended me to the endometriosis specialist, and it kind of just like fell into place from there. But it did take over a decade for somebody to take me seriously. So like,
Yeah, and the really messed up part of it is if you just decided that you didn't want to have kids, you never would have had it taken care of, at least if you stayed at that practice that you were at. So
well,
the only
exactly.
reason that they know is because you were getting worked up for infertility.
Yes, and I think that, I think a lot of it stems with you just have to sometimes move around the different practices until you actually find somebody that you think is taking you seriously. Because a lot of them just don't, or they don't have time for it. So, sorry that you're going through all of that. That's a lot, but that's our recommended advice. All right, guys, next week is our live show in Horsham, Pennsylvania for the Center for Forensic Science Research and Education. You're going to be doing a lecture Friday night, and then the next day is going to be our live show and lectures by Scott Duffey and Joe Giacalone. So it's going to be a super fun day, a whole weekend filled with amazing stuff. And if you sign up for the Gross Room, you not only get like the coolest membership ever and access to the best community in the world, but you also get half off of your ticket. So check it out.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be fun, and I'm really looking forward to it.
All right, guys, please head over to Apple or Spotify and leave us a review. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you have stories, comments, and no concerns, please submit them to stories@motherknowsdeath.com.
See you guys. Thank you for listening to Mother Knows Death. As a reminder, my training is as a pathologist assistant. I have a master's level education and specialize in anatomy and pathology education. I am not a doctor, and I have not diagnosed or treated anyone, dead or alive, without the assistance of a licensed medical doctor. This show, my website, and social media accounts are designed to educate and inform people based on my experience working in pathology so they can make healthier decisions regarding their life and well-being. Always remember that science is changing every day, and the opinions expressed in this episode are based on my knowledge of those subjects at the time of publication. If you are having a medical problem, have a medical question, or are having a medical emergency, please contact your physician or visit an urgent care center, emergency room, or hospital. Please rate, review, and subscribe to Mother Knows Death on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or anywhere you get podcasts. Thanks.